Let's start with the first topic, ILO, the concept of sustainability and comparing and contrasting it with environmentalism. But first, let's contemplate what the environment is. There is no single and universal definition of the natural environment. However, it is widely understood as nature, natural habitat, or the part of the earth that has not been built or formed by humans. Alternatively, Parkin describes the natural environment as the biophysical limits of life on planet Earth. For example, soils, air, oceans, and ecological systems upon which the social and economic dimensions of life depend. Parkin argues that such limits are resources or natural capital that is available for the progress of humans and other species. Alternatively, other perspectives of the natural environment stem from deeper philosophical understandings of nature, such as deep ecology, that reject a human-centered view that nature is external to what we are. Schultz argues that nature can be viewed as everything other than humankind. Yet humans have an inextricable link with nature. Schultz notes that we humans sometimes forget that we also are part of nature. Equally, humans rely on nature for food, shelter, and the raw materials for everything we make. The magic of life that nature makes possible cannot be taken for granted. Australian geologist and environmentalist Professor Tim Flannery puts it this way. Planet Earth is the only living planet we know of in all the vastness of the universe. To illustrate his point, Flannery quotes the words of American astronomer, astrophysicist, and astrobiologist Carl Sagan, who described Earth in equally dramatic terms. On May 11, 1996, Sagan wrote about a photo of planet Earth that was captured 6 years before in 1990 by Voyager 1, an American space satellite. Sagan spoke of just how unique Earth and its environmental systems are. Read his quote from this slide. Nature provides humans with all the basics of life, from the air we breathe to water we drink and soils from which food can be grown. The mineral wealth of nature provides an abundance of energy and all the raw materials needed for manufacturing complex technologies, housing, infrastructure, and transportation systems. In other words, the foundations of civilization itself. The fundamental point that he was making was that the natural environment of planet Earth is a precious thing worthy of our protection. Now let's think about the concept of sustainability and see how it compares with environmentalism. Tied to understandings of the natural environment is the concept of sustainability, otherwise known as sustainable development. Whilst indigenous peoples' knowledge of the human impacts on the environment date back centuries, the origins of the sustainable development concepts can be traced back at least as far back as the 1960s with the emergence of the environmental movement. This movement was concerned with the sustainability of humanity's consumption of natural resources. The environmental movement gained impetus in the 1960s with the work of environmentalists like Rachel Carson, whose book called The Silent Spring drew attention to the environmental impacts of the global chemical industry. Other milestones in the development of the environmental movement include the Club of Rome conference that resulted in the book Limits to Growth. And this book articulated the boundaries of human consumption of natural resources. Now, please watch this brief video called The Origins of the Environmental Movement for an introduction to the origins of the movement. Building on concerns of environmentalists, community groups, and governments about human consumption of natural resources, in 1980 the terms sustainable development and sustainability were coined. In 1987, the sustainable development or sustainability concepts were developed further and widely disseminated through a report by the World Commission on Environment and Development, which was called Our Common Future. And that presented its simple and memorable definition of meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And this was introduced to you in topic 1. In 1992, this definition had become widely accepted at a United Nations Conference on the Environment, and where 170 nations endorsed a global action plan, which was called Agenda 21. The aim of Agenda 21 was to strive to achieve sustainable economic growth that integrated environmental responsibility. Now, before watching the next ILO, please watch the YouTube video that was referred to within this ILO or this podcast. You'll be able to find the link to the YouTube video back on the LMS page.